So let me do that. Admit Leanne. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Annie Trimberger. I am a life and health coach. I work with professional women, women like 30s and older. And I do a really, what I think is a unique form of coaching. We talk about everything from nutrition to fitness to mindset, stress management, women's hormones, and we do work on all kinds of goals, mostly related to health, but a lot of them, a lot of my clients see increased energy, more confidence, all kind of stuff like that. So I'll tell you a little bit more about my coaching as we go on. But I am going to be live coaching during this webinar. So I'm going to ask everyone to go around and just a super quick intro, just like your name. And I'd love to hear why you're interested in this workshop tonight, if there's something specific that drew you to it or anything like that. And then as I get into it, if you have questions, just drop them in the chat box and I will stop from time to time to answer questions, and I'll save room at the end for questions as well. Okay. Carrie, would you start?
Hey, hi, my name is Carrie. I'm in the, I guess now you could say my late 40s. I'm close to my late 40s. I'll be 48 in a few months. So I'm saying that, so just I've noticed, now as I go through my mid to later 40s, it's getting harder and harder to make changes. And I was just really intrigued by Annie's, comments about, how does all of this affect your body and that type of stuff. So I'm excited to learn more.
Oh, yeah, we'll get into it. Sue, how about you?
Sure. I am glad to be here. I found out about this through a friend of mine, Mary Nutting, and she said, Sue, I thought you'd be interested in this because I am very, very much interested in health and wellness for myself and also to help other people. So I'm just curious.
Awesome. Well, it's good to meet you. And I love Mary Nutting, so what a great introduction. Amy, how about you?
Hi, everybody. I'm Amy Weatherby. I'm in Annie's, what is that, group coaching?
Yeah. You graduated from my nurse project and now level 2.
Yes. And I'm familiar sort of with the stress response from like a hormonal level. A lot of the other hormones at play and how everything works together is new to me. So interested to learn more. And I'm going to finish my workout while you do this. So I'll probably turn my video off, but
okay. Awesome.
I'm doing.
Sounds good. Okay, cool. Jessie, how about you? Can you unmute for a sec?
Hey, I'm Jessie. I'm a personal trainer and a nutrition coach, and I wanted to do this call so that I could learn more about hormones and stress and everything as well.
Awesome. Welcome.
Thanks.
And I'm not sure, Monica, are you able to take off your
I am, and I'll turn my video on for like 2 seconds.
Okay.
So you got me with the hormone thing. Just as I'm turning 40, the things that I've been doing just aren't seem to be working anymore. So I don't know, and I'm excited to see Amy. So hi.
And for those of you who don't know, which is probably most of you, Monica, Amy, and I all rode together in college our freshman year. So we go way, way back. Monica, it's good to see your face.
I hate being on camera, so I'm turning it off.
Okay, Elizabeth said that she is working in multitasking, so I think she's probably a no-go for this unless you want to unmute yourself and just do a quick intro, Elizabeth. And then while we're waiting, Leanne and Anahita, if you guys are able to, if you could just like unmute yourself and give a quick intro. Wow, you're walking nice.
Well, I'm on my deck avoiding my loud children. Sorry, I was unmuted when I joined.
That's okay.
I'm Leanne. I'm in Annie's coaching project, and I turned 40, and so hormones are changing things, and I would like to figure out a way to work with them.
Awesome. Welcome. This is going to be so good. And Anahita said she is doing dinner with kiddos, so that is her introduction. She's another former client of mine. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we will just get right into this. Pull up these slides. Let's get into this presentation mode. Okay, cool. So here we are. I really think women's hormones are the missing piece. And I called this workshop the fat loss puzzle, but we're not really going to focus just on fat loss. It's really just like overall health, energy, mood, all those kind of things. Fat loss is definitely a piece, but it's not the only piece it's not the only puzzle, I guess, that we're trying to solve. But this hormone piece fits into lots of these puzzles related to women's health and fat loss. So just a little bit more about me. I'm Annie. I am a former big firm lawyer. I was a federal clerk and at 2 big law firms for 8 years total, and made a major pivot. And I am now spending my life working with professional women, lawyers, business owners, stuff like that, helping them prioritize their own health and happiness. And I love this. I've really found what is my divine mission in life. And I'm so passionate about this work because I see so many high achieving, so perfectionist or recovering perfectionist women who are doing everything and taking care of everybody except for themselves. And so I really see my work as helping you put your health and happiness back on the front burner and get to your goals involving your health, your happiness, your energy, so that you can show up and shine in your career, in your business, take good care of your family, be the happy, fun, energetic mom or grandma, make an impact in your community. And all that happens when you prioritize taking care of yourself. Okay. So this webinar is clearly not for everyone. It's really designed for women who are in their 30s and older, who are struggling to lose weight or to just figure out like what all goes together to take good care of their health. And maybe it's like you're frustrated because you are trying and not seeing the results that you want. Maybe it's someone you're losing like 10 pounds and gaining 15 pounds back, losing the 15 pounds, gaining it back, and kind of playing that game over and over again. Maybe you're just confused and you're sick of all the latest things like are carbs good or bad? Are we supposed to eat yogurt? Is yogurt good or bad? Are we, what are we doing now as there's all these latest fad diets that keep coming out and are really confusing and I think very misleading as well. So that is who it's for. And if you can't tell already, I'm super passionate about just women's health and happiness, but especially this hormone piece of the puzzle. And couple of reasons. Number one, I get the same questions from women day after day after day, the same questions. And, questions of, I'm eating, really low calories and I'm not seeing results, or I'm doing all this cardio and I am not seeing results, or I am trying and it's just so hard and I don't have the willpower. I see questions like that over and over again, and it's just unnecessary once you understand the science behind nourishing your body and giving it what it needs to meet your health goals and take really good care of your body. So if you have any kind of questions like that, I promise you, I've probably seen it before and I probably have a solution that will help. Second reason I'm so passionate about this is that all the current recommendations out there for fitness, for health, for fat loss are based on research that was done on men. Up until 1994, it was actually illegal for women to participate in clinical research studies. And after that, just 15 years ago, only like a quarter of the studies had women involved. And this even goes so far as to include studies on female hormone replacement therapy. They're done on men because women's bodies are complicated. Women's bodies change, every month as we go through our cycle and then through different stages of life. So it's complicated and complex. It's worth studying. And there's only emerging science about it, that most of the recommendations out there are based on research on men, which is why it may be that they work well for men and don't work well for women. Like specifically, one quick example I can think of is keto. Keto, like the craze right now, like cutting out all the carbs. Women's bodies love carbs, and I'll talk more about that why later. But men's bodies love fat. So of course, keto works well for men, and it does not work that well for women. Okay. And then the third reason is that I see this also all the time with my clients is that what used to work does not work anymore. And, maybe in your 20s or your like early 30s, you could have a fun weekend or like a pretty, big dinner out or whatever, what have you. And you could just bounce right back from it. And you're doing the same things now in your late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. It doesn't work. And maybe what you figured out worked in your 30s and 40s, all of a sudden doesn't work when you get to your 50s. And that's because our body goes through different changes as we go through our cycle, through perimenopause, and then after menopause. And we really need 3 different distinct ways to take care of our bodies as we go through those different cycles. The body chemistry is different, hormone levels are different. And so if your program that you're doing or whatever you're doing to take care of yourself isn't taking that into account, like most programs that are based on men's, research on men's bodies, it's not going to work. And then you're just going to get frustrated and think it's your fault because you're not trying hard enough. You're not doing it right. You're not good enough. And none of that is true. It's just that you keep trying harder at the wrong thing. And it really helps to know exactly what you need to do, which I'm going to talk about tonight. And once you do, it's actually pretty easy, but you just have to know the right things to do in the right way to nourish your body. Okay, so I think we can all agree women are complicated, especially compared to men. So if you look at men's life cycle, hormonal fluctuations, men go through puberty, they have a pretty steady increase in testosterone. They go across all of, their adult lives with a steady level of testosterone. And then when they reach an older age, they go through a pretty similar steady decline of testosterone that's called andropause. It's not nearly as tumultuous as menopause, but it is a decline in testosterone. Women, on the other hand, go through puberty just like men. Their estrogen and progesterone starts to fluctuate and increase. And then you go through this monthly cycle of hormones going up and down and changing every month. Meanwhile, there's also potential pregnancy that could go in the mix once or twice or who knows how many times. And then as you move along, perimenopause is a different hormonal situation. Menopause and postmenopause are all different hormonal situations. So women are super complicated, and that's, once you look at that, it's pretty clear to show like why big pharma chooses to study men and just say, hey, this will work for everybody. It's much more smooth and simple if you're just looking at men. But that's why we need something that is tailored specifically to us. Okay, I just went for this. So even, to the extent that female hormone replacement drugs are studied on men, also drug companies use male mice instead of female mice. Like it's really, really only just studied on male because it's less efficient to study men's bodies. So there is an emerging body of science. And what I've done is cobble together everything I could find, books, podcasts, websites, everything that I could find that's out there about women's hormones and the science behind everything and what to do about it. And I put it together here for you guys. Okay, before I go any further, does anybody have any questions? Just gonna scroll through. No, okay, cool. Okay, so it's really good to know how we got here from where we started, right? And if we look at our ancient ancestors like Paleo woman, what they kind of did to survive and thrive, one important thing to note is that at that time, way back in the day, we faced a much different threat, right? The main threat was starvation and hunger. And that was what our bodies evolved to be stressed by. Okay, so when we think of stressors, the stress was, oh, I might starve, our family might starve. That was the main threat. Right now, that is not a threat, especially live in the United States. There is an abundance of easily available, high calorie dense food on every corner. And that is part of our problem, not the whole thing, but that is definitely part of it. So I talk a lot about stress and how that affects our hormones. I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but we go really in depth with that in my coaching program, the Nourish Project, because our body, when the woman's body is under stress, remember the woman is the gender that's responsible for producing children and carrying forth the next generation. So our body does not want to starve. So when we're stressed, our body thinks, oh no, the stress might be starvation. I'm going to hold on to this body fat. And that doesn't matter if the stress is the news cycle or your demanding boss or your kids crying or what's going on in politics right now or what's going on in the world or all of that accumulated. Our body thinks, I'm under stress. I might be starving. I'm going to hold on to this body fat. So that's a big thing. And that is different in women than it is in men. Couple other things about how our paleo women ancestors evolved to thrive was what they ate, right? They ate kind of like what we think of as a paleo diet, if anyone's heard of that. Meat, eggs, berries, veggies, starches, no processed food, no bread, stuff like that. So they were eating starches and carbs with like berries and tubers and potatoes and stuff like that, but they weren't making bread. It wasn't a lot of dairy either. And a big thing is that they were moving, literally hunting and gathering and walking through the woods, foraging all day, but at a very leisurely pace. And then once in a while, there'd be a huge burst of energy, like maybe a punctuated sprint. Like imagine you're hunting and you're walking. You find your deer. Oh my gosh, like the adrenaline's coursing through your body. You get it. Then you have to carry it back to the village, right? So that would be like the equivalent of short bursts of heavy strength training with lots of walking. None of the kind of like medium, thing that would be equivalent to jogging or an elliptical machine or anything like that. It's just lots of gentle, leisurely daily movement, lots of rest, and then some bursts of heavy activity with your picking up heavy things and putting them back down. In addition to that, lots of rest, sleeping with the sun, being up more in the summer and less in the winter, and a very communal life, especially for the women who were usually, working together to like raise children of the village or what have you. And we see that a lot in different programs and different training programs, that like communal nature of women. And that's one of the reasons that I've gone almost exclusively to my group coaching, both my intro program, the Nourish Project, and then my level 2 program. They're all groups of women who come together and really support each other. And I hear from my clients all so often that they love the group format, and they show up for each other, they support each other, they cheer each other on, and it's really helpful in meeting their goals. Okay, so let us move on. Okay, so here is pyramid of what hormones affect women's metabolism the most. A lot of times, when you think of women's hormones, you think of estrogen and progesterone, which I will talk about more later. They are kind of the stars of the show, but they're not actually the main actors. So really, insulin and cortisol and adrenal glands and the thyroid glands are huge. So insulin and cortisol have to do with movement, like how much you're moving, calories. Well, calories are obviously the base of it, but calories in is a huge part of the metabolism. And then the next one is how much you're moving. So that affects your insulin and cortisol. And then the stress hormones are next. So adrenaline and the thyroid glands are really super important. But these all below this line are the same in men and women. They don't necessarily work exactly the same, but they're present in both men and women. Then you get to the top of the pyramid, and that's where estrogen and progesterone come in. Those are what I'm really going to be focusing on tonight. So when we're in my Nourish Project, my 12-week program, we focus on sort of all of these in this order, and then we get to these women's hormones, and that is like the icing on the cake. So let us get into what they do. So has everyone heard of estrogen and progesterone? Like, most people have their screens off. Yeah, most of us have heard of that, or at least estrogen. Yeah, you can give me a thumbs up. That's awesome. So if you've heard of it, maybe you don't know exactly what it does, right? So I'm going to go over what happens with estrogen and progesterone during your monthly cycle. So even if you are, into perimenopause or postmenopause, I promise this is going to be like the foundation of everything else. So it's really important to understand what these hormones are doing in our body. And then from there, when they start changing, then we understand a lot better why, right? Okay, so we can divide the women's monthly cycle into two phases. We have a couple different names. The first 2 weeks. So if day 1 is the first day you get your period, day 14 is the day that you ovulate, and then day 28 is like the last day before you get your period again. The first 2 weeks from the first day of your period to ovulation is sometimes called the follicular phase, or it's also called the estrogen phase. And this pink line here represents estrogen, and you can see it is highest during these first 2 weeks. The second 2 weeks are called the luteal phase or progesterone phase, and that's when progesterone picks up. It's triggered by ovulation, and then that picks up and sort of replaces estrogen. So estrogen, they're both kind of asleep on day 0. Day 28, day 0, they're both asleep. Menstruation triggers the estrogen to kind of come up, grow, and peak, and then it goes down a little bit. The ovulation is what's going to trigger progesterone to go. And they both have these bell curves. So they cross each other, but they're pretty low. And then at ovulation, there's actually a testosterone spike. So testosterone is high at ovulation, and the first 2 weeks, estrogen is higher. The second 2 weeks, progesterone is higher. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what they each do, and then we'll get into like what that actually means in your body. So estrogen, which is higher those first 2 weeks, is more insulin sensitive. So that means it loves carbs. Estrogen is a carb-loving hormone. And that is one reason that women's bodies do not respond well to low carb diets. Maybe in the beginning, right away, you might see some weight loss that's actually water weight, but it is going to mess up your hormones long-term if you're eating a low carb diet. Estrogen also blocks cortisol. Cortisol is that stress hormone. Remember, we mentioned in the beginning. So it helps us manage stress. It deals better with overeating because of the insulin sensitivity. So that means during these first 2 weeks, when your estrogen is higher, your body's going to deal better with overeating, or maybe going on some kind of carb fest, right? Maybe on purpose, maybe on accident, but your body's going to deal better with it because of the presence of the estrogen. It also promotes serotonin and dopamine, which are two feel-good hormones. in your body. So it's going to be a time where you might feel like you just, for whatever reason, for no reason, have, you feel good, you have good self-esteem, you have more ambition. It's not for no reason. It's because of the estrogen and the time in your cycle. And for that reason is why sometimes estrogen is called female testosterone. So it's like when you feel more powerful, like you can take on the world, you're ready to conquer big projects or really anything that comes up. Okay, so on the other hand, we have progesterone. So that's the other female sex hormone. Progesterone is more insulin resistant. It's not a carb loving hormone. So those second 2 weeks in your cycle when estrogen's low and progesterone's high is not the time to go on the carb fast or to be eating higher carbs. It is very good at blocking cortisol. So both estrogen and progesterone are really good at blocking cortisol. So they both help us manage stress. And so when your progesterone is high and cortisol and estrogen is low, it's a better time for just to be eating slightly lower carbs, not a low carb diet, not high, not like no carbs, but just slightly lower because the body is not really dealing with them as well because it doesn't have the estrogen. Okay, so let's talk about why this might be. So if you go back to the chart, day 14 is ovulation. So progesterone's whole job is to nurture a potential pregnancy to become a viable baby. And then if you get your period, it's like, oh, we don't have the baby. I'm no longer needed. I'm going to take a little rest and let estrogen take over. So if you think about it that way, the first 2 weeks of your period, your body is like, let's get pregnant mode. Even if that is not like what's on your life plan, that is what your body's plan is for you, right? Those second 2 weeks, it's like, let's nest, let's nurture this little potential baby. Let's save body fat because we need to be able to feed the baby in case of, the stress of potential starvation. So we're going to hold on to body fat. We're not going to burn carbs because we might need them. We're going to store them to take care of this little potential baby, whether the baby's there or not. But then on day 28, it all starts over again. So one way I love to think about estrogen and progesterone is that they are like twin sisters who are opposite, but totally depend on each other. Or you could think of maybe even two best friends who are like opposites attract, and together we are the dynamic duo. So estrogen is like the fun sister. So that's what dominates the first half of the cycle. She wakes up when the period hits and she's like, let's get it. Let's like have an adventure. She's resilient. She's ambitious. She's adventurous. She's rambunctious. She's more likely to get herself into trouble. Literally, right? I mean, that is the whole goal of this part of the cycle. She's resilient to stress, resilient to calorie fluctuations. So this is a really good time to do hard things. It's a good time to train harder, to do harder workouts. It's a good time to eat more. It's a good time to tackle big projects at home or tackle big projects at work or in your business because you just have that energy. You have that drive, you have that like serotonin and dopamine all kind of like coursing through your body. And especially on that, around that day 14. So right, that middle week of your cycle, and specifically that like day or two of ovulation, that's when testosterone is also going to spike. So testosterone, you can think of as like the little brother and all the classic stereotypical guy things, right? It's strong, it's powerful, you have an increased libido. So, I've seen some women business owners who sort of plan their business around this cycle of first 2 weeks doing big, creative, ambitious projects, which really culminates that like around the ovulation period. And then the second 2 weeks, they get more into sort of like planning, brainstorming, and kind of laying low a little bit. So when we look at progesterone, she is the responsible sister, right? She's the one that mom puts in charge when she's gone. She dominates the second half of the cycle. She wakes up by ovulation because she needs to get called in to nurture this potential pregnancy. So she's the one who's like, let's be safe, let's be responsible, don't get hurt. She is still resilient to stress, but she wants to store fat, like basically save money, save resources because we might need them for the baby. She doesn't want to train as hard. She's just kind of in nesting mode. The body actually runs warmer during the second 2 weeks of the cycle, runs a little cooler during the first 2 weeks. And it's just like an all over nesting period, and then starts over again every 28 days. Okay, so I'm going to go into what to do about it, and then I'll pause and see if anyone has any questions. So what does this mean for your life, right? I've already sort of, mentioned a couple things, but really what this means is if you lean into your cycle, and this does apply if you are not getting your period because you have an IUD or you have really low body fat or whatever other reason, or if you are in perimenopause and your cycle is not quite as regular as it used to be, or even post-menopause, you can still just literally pick a day and track those 28 days and do these different 2 parts of the cycle. So during the first 2 weeks, the follicular phase, the estrogen phase, it's a time for higher carbs or even higher calories. Most people think you need higher carbs or more calories like the week leading up to your period, like PMS, but you don't. Your body is just craving nutrients and it's tired because of the progesterone. So you're getting kind of like false signals. So if you kind of pay attention to that, you can kind of ward off a lot of those PMS cravings. So during the first 2 weeks, higher carbs or higher calories, harder workouts, more kind of like HIIT workouts or metabolic conditioning, strength training with heavy weights, going heavier, trying to hit a personal record or get a PR in the gym. All those are going to feel really good. You're going to have the energy. You're going to be ambitious. And this might not be the first day, like day 1 of your period, if you feel kind of crappy, but it's generally during this period. Temperature stuff, you're going to want to lean into cool and calming temperatures, maybe drinking iced coffee instead of hot coffee, cold water instead of room temperature water. There are certain foods you can eat that are cooling foods like fish, raw vegetables, mint, basil, kind of green herbs, stuff like that. If you're planning a date night, I promised as I was talking about this webinar, this is the time to go for it. Like this is going to be the time when you feel like you're into like a fun adventure. You're feeling like spontaneous and frisky. And same thing in work and life. Like you are just going to feel like going for it. The flip side is those second 2 weeks, the luteal phase. So day 14 until the day you get your period, you actually can switch to higher fats and lower carbs, or even lower calories. If you're practicing fasting, this would be actually a good time to bring in a fasting day once a week, and just be careful that you're doing that correctly. As far as training, you're not going to go as hard. No HIIT workouts, no metabolic conditioning workouts. Maybe replacing those with yoga or more walking or just like stretching and like active recovery. Strength training is still really, really good, but it's a good time to go a little bit lighter. And maybe if you go heavier earlier in your cycle, have a lighter week that is called a deload week. So just giving your body that overall time to recover. Temperature wise, your body's going to be running hot and you want to actually support that. So you want to lean into it, like stay bundled up, keep the temperature warm in your house. It's a great time to have spicy food, Indian food, Thai food, Mexican, hot peppers, hot drinks, stuff like that. And this is a time, again, if you're planning a date night, you might not feel quite as adventurous, or you might just feel like, I just want to snuggle and like literally Netflix and chill tonight, not like any code for anything. And so it's nice to know that ahead of time, or at least be able to understand why you might be feeling the way that you're feeling. And then as far as work and life stuff goes, it's a good time for more just planning and more maybe relaxing, maybe kicking back a little bit more and doing longer, harder days or projects during the first 2 weeks of the cycle. Okay, I'm going to pause right there and see if anyone has questions. No? Okay.
Annie, I do have a quick question. Sorry, it took me a
yeah.
second to find mute.
No worries.
It might be TMI. Sorry, ladies.
It's
Having an
never
IUD.
TMI around here.
I am fortunate enough, I guess, to not actually have a period. So does that mean this, like, does that mean that my cycle isn't happening this way because I've already, like, there's a physical being confusing it? And then does that change things?
Because you're pregnant?
No, gosh.
Oh.
No, I have an IUD.
Oh, okay, a different kind of physical being. Okay. I have a physical being
item
using my body, so that's where my mind is.
Physical item, sorry.
So if you have an IUD, yes, it can absolutely, you still do this. If you can just track back to when you put in the IUD and you can like figure out when the first day of your last cycle was, you can calculate it that way. But if it's been a while and you don't really remember, you can just pick a day and just start doing it. It will still support your body and it'll still work well in your body.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Elizabeth, I will answer your question. Let's see, I'm getting a couple questions from different people privately. IUD, okay. I got a question about PMDD. I don't know what that is. But you know what I'll do is I will look into it and I'll send out the answer to you guys when I do the replay. Okay, cool. Any other questions? Just put them in the chat bar and I'll keep going. Okay, so that is sort of how you can support your hormones if you're still getting your normal cycle, or if you don't get it for whatever reason. Let's talk about perimenopause next. So perimenopause can start anywhere from late 30s to late 50s. And all it means is that the follicles that hold the eggs are less viable. So they're not maturing, or there's fewer of them. And ovulation starts to be a little bit hit or miss. Our periods start to be a little bit hit or miss. Hormones start to be all over the place. And that is because when, like I said, the progesterone, the wake up call for it is the ovulation. And so if there's no ovulation, the progesterone does not get its wake up call. And that means that estrogen, the fun, crazy, wild sister, is just running rampant in our bodies, right? So you think of these hormones as like sisters who are like playing on a seesaw or a teeter-totter. All of a sudden progesterone gets off and estrogen's like over there by herself. So she's still trying to play and she's like pushing out, sometimes she's up, sometimes she's down. She is all over the place, and she is the responsible sister that usually keeps her in check is gone. So you might have cravings that are all over the place, especially for carbs. You might be experiencing weight gain, might have problems sleeping, hot flashes, all that kind of stuff happens during perimenopause. And it is because the progesterone is decreasing or not present in the system. So traditional response to all this is, I'm going to work harder. I'm going to have more willpower. I'm going to cut my calories again. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to go crazy with like Orange Theory and Sculpt and yoga and Peloton and all the things that used to work in my 20s and early 30s. And that's when it gets super frustrating, because that stuff used to work. It does not work anymore because our whole body chemistry is changing and we need a different response. So what we need to do is literally step in as the mother of these twin hormones and replace what the progesterone does in our body. And what it does is it's that calming, responsible hormone. So it's actually the best response to all this is to focus on rest and relaxation and managing stress. And it's difficult, especially if you don't, know this, because this is a very stressful time in most women's lives. Like most women are reaching high in their career. They're kind of sandwiched between raising kids and taking care of older parents or family members. There is a lot going on. And so this is actually a time to become really, really intentional about stress management and rest and relaxation and recovering like a boss. It is not time to be like, I'm going to do 2-a-days and I'm going to hammer this out and I'm going to whip my body back into shape, because your body is not there for it. So this thing keeps being in the way. Okay, so perimenopause is just literally the world's best excuse to take self-care to the extreme. So lots of ways to do this, they're all good. And as many ways as you can fit this in is really going to help as your body's going through these changes and that progesterone is leaving your body and you're kind of replacing the role that it plays. So lots of time in green settings or nature therapy, socializing with good friends, especially if the good friends are not stressing you out and are not, pairing it with other habits we're trying to avoid, like eating lots of carbs or going off the rails with drinking or something like that. Time with pets is such a good stress reliever. Time with any loved ones, sexy time, lots of snuggling, leisure walking should become your dominant form of exercise at or after perimenopause. If you are my client already, you already know. And if you're going to be working with me in the Nourish Project, I will preach walking, sleep, and water until the day I die. Those are like the magical trifecta. But leisure walking is the one form of exercise that is going to increase your metabolism, decrease the stress in your body. All the other exercise forms are going to increase your stress. And some of them don't even boost your metabolism. Naps are great. Sauna therapy can be really good for you. That contrast therapy of the hot and the cold kind of extremes. Massage, spa, that kind of just kind of pampering yourself. Another great one is not, the like massage or spa, but actually having a very strong purpose and meaning to your life. And this is actually a huge, very substantial buffer against stress. And, not so much for women in their 30s, but as you get to the later 40s, 50s, when this is continuing on, a lot of women are thinking about retiring, and they're thinking like, not as much as men probably, but still it's a huge thing. If you've dedicated the last 30 years to a career and formed your identity around it, and you're wondering like, who am I after this career? What am I going to do? How am I going to fill your days? Finding something that really gives you a beautiful sense of purpose and meaning is a really good substantial buffer against stress. Same thing, if kids are leaving the house and you're empty nester, some parents are like, bye, and other people feel like, oh my gosh, I've dedicated the last 20 years to raising this human and now they're gone. And what am I to do? So really focusing intently on finding that important purpose and meaning that gives you joy, and that will help buffer against stress. So kind of to summarize this list, it's like any kind of awe experience. Like this massage feels so good, or like this is really moving and beautiful. All those things are good. I mean, they're good any time in your life, but just going to get more and more important like every decade that we age as women. Okay, before I go into menopause, I'm just take a little pause. Sorry, no pun intended, to talk, just check if there's any questions, any thoughts, anything going on in the chat. Okay, cool. So menopause. Okay, so technically menopause is 12 months in a row with no menstruation. So once you have 12 solid months with no menstruation, you've gone through menopause and it's postmenopause. So what happens to our body during that times is, if you think of these hormones as like your Joan of Arc kind of suit of armor, estrogen is the full body armor. It sensitizes us to both insulin and cortisol. So it helps us deal with carbs and helps us deal with stress. The progesterone is the shield. It's not like quite as good of an armor, but it blocks the cortisol. And then the testosterone is the sword. Once in a while it pops up during like the ovulation days, and really it's like aggressive, like increases our libido, power, self-esteem, and also buffers us from stress. So estrogen and progesterone really dominate premenopause. As you go through perimenopause, the estrogen is still going up and down, but the progesterone is decreasing overall. What happens in postmenopause is also the estrogen is going to go down. And so what we see is, this is sort of like a side note, but the weight of, like, if you're carrying a little extra weight, or even if you haven't before, it shifts in your body from that like traditional women's hourglass figure where the chest, waist, hips ratio looks sort of like an hourglass, to more of an apple shape, where it's just, around the belly, that belly fat. And the interesting thing to note about that is this is the same place that younger women carry fat who are under a lot of stress. So that belly fat is actually a stress response to your body. So if that is a problem area for you that you're trying to target, it is about stress. Whether you're younger, you just need to deal with, manage, get rid of the stress. If you are going through perimenopause or postmenopause, you don't have the progesterone, or maybe the progesterone and the estrogen, to help the body deal with stress. So because of that, if you're not actively taking a role to manage and decrease your stress, you're going to see some of that weight or that excess body fat shifting to the belly area. So 4 key ways to really nourish and support your body post-menopause. Right? Okay. So number 1 is going to be stress management. I know I just said that, but I talk about this all the time. It's so important, and we don't realize how critically important it is to our health. We think it's just like, oh, I'm stressed out, but no, it's so much more important than that. So managing stress, finding ways to deal with stress, finding ways to decrease stress to help replace the role of the progesterone and the role of the estrogen. They're both kind of leaving the body. Then after menopause, it gets also really important to fill in that role of dealing with carbs, the insulin sensitivity that the estrogen did. So because remember, the estrogen is really resilient. It can deal with a lot of carbs, it can deal with little carbs, it loves carbs. It's like resilient, and we lose that. So it's really important as you're shifting out of perimenopause and into postmenopause that we find like the Goldilocks level of carbs. So not too many, not too few, being super consistent, because we're being the ones, our body's not super resilient to carbs anymore. So we have to really be careful what we're giving it. The body's just not able to handle the extremes as much as it used to. And then also it's really helpful. And these 4 things are good for everyone. The trick is, as we get older, you have to do them. As you're younger, you can get away with, with eating crappier food, not working out, doing lots of cardio, all that kind of stuff. You just can't get away with it as much as we get into our late 30s, as we get into our 40s, 50s, 60s later. So shifting to more complex carbs, whole grains, green leafy vegetables, starchy vegetables, fruit. All these things have lower GI index than like processed food, straight sugar, candy, simple carbs. So shifting to that can help your body deal with the carbs that you're eating. Number 3, protein, getting lots of protein. Actually, postmenopausal women need the second most protein of any, demographic group out there aside from teenage boys. Most people don't know that. Most of my clients are shocked when I have them start eating dramatically more protein. But what it does is it stabilizes the carbs. It helps us build muscle, makes us feel full and satisfied. Just super, super good. So making sure we're getting enough protein. And when I say enough protein, that is different. The amount that everyone needs is different for everyone, but I guarantee you're probably not getting enough. So I would start by aiming for 20 to 25 grams per meal, or like a minimum of 100 grams per day. Ideally, I love to see all my clients at close to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Most people aren't eating anywhere close to that. When we start working together and we kind of build up as your body gets used to it and you start seeing the benefits of it. Last thing, traditional strength training. This is another thing where so many women are not used to strength training. They're more comfortable and more familiar in group fitness classes or cardio or running or jogging, or maybe they are concerned about, those, I think they're pretty much debunked, but I'm never quite sure. But, myths like, oh, strength training is going to make me look bulky, or it's going to make me look like a man. I promise it is not going to look like a man. It's going to make you look strong and fit and lean and curvy in the right places. It's also what is going to do as we're going into perimenopause and menopause is it's taking those carbs and those calories that we might be eating that our body is not naturally dealing well with and turning it into muscle. The more muscle we have, the higher the metabolism is going to be, and the more our body is going to be able to burn fat, even when we're not working out or doing any kind of exercise. As we get into postmenopause and perimenopause, those hunger cravings can be relentless. So it's like giving our body something to do with those calories the days that we do, go over. And then using that calorie surplus plus the remaining testosterone that is actually relatively high in the bodies to make muscle and, like I said, burn body fat instead of being stored as body fat. Okay, so that's all I have on all those things for you guys. Does anyone have any questions, thoughts, comments? Was this helpful? If this was like helpful or like slightly mind-blowing, give me like a thumbs up on your screen. You don't have to turn it on. Okay, good. Awesome. Okay. Thank you all so much for tuning in, for joining me. Some of you, I know are already my clients, and I love seeing my clients on here and just getting really educated about what is really going on with your bodies. One thing that I see so often is that people get kind of lured into yes, Jesse, definitely tracking macros, especially to make sure that they're getting consistent amount of carbs and the right amount of protein. If they're trying to lose weight, should they be in a calorie deficit as well as stress management? Yeah, so if you're trying to lose weight and you're postmenopause, yes, you can be in a calorie deficit. Being in a calorie deficit is the only way to actually lose fat and lose weight. There's no magic pill like keto or paleo, intermittent fasting or anything like that. However, figuring out what a calorie deficit is can be really complicated, especially if your hormones are out of whack, if your hunger signals are out of whack, if you've been under eating for a long time. Most people are surprised to know that at least I'd say a third of my clients come to me having been eating very low calories for so long that I increase their calories, sometimes doubling or more the calories that they're eating, and they actually lose weight. So I don't promise that everyone gets to eat more and lose weight, but it is actually fairly common, especially women who have been dieting for a long time. Okay, I'm just looking if there's any more questions. Thank you, Shondell. This was great. I'm looking forward to the replay. Yeah, I will send out the replay. So if you've enjoyed this and you feel like you know someone else who would, feel free to forward that on to them. For anyone who is not already my client, I just want to mention, I'll be sending an email about this, but I am about to start enrolling for my Summer Nourish project. It's my 12-week intro coaching project. It is a group program for women. We go over all this stuff really in depth and have weekly calls. We talk about nutrition, fitness, stress management, hormones, mindset, all that kind of stuff. Women in the group have different goals. A lot of them is fat loss. Some of them is actually weight gain. Sometimes it's just to feel more energy or feel more confident about how they're taking care of their body. So for everyone who's on this call or who registered, I'm going to be sending you a special bonus of an extra $100 off the early bird price. I'm only taking 12 women in that project, and like a third of the spots are already filled from my wait list. So I think that will go pretty quickly. That starts the end of May, and I'm going to be doing like a private launch to my email list and to you guys for the next 4 or 5 days, and I'll start the public launch next week. So watch for that in your email. If you have any questions or want to talk about it, I would love to chat. So just shoot me an email. And that's all I have for you guys. Anyone has any last questions? I'll stick around for a minute, but otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great night. Bye.